As we allow more presenters to come in, I'll just get started by welcoming everyone. I'm your moderator, Minerva Delgado with the Alliance to End Hunger. The Alliance to End Hunger is a multi-sector collaborative working to end hunger both in the U.S. and around the world. Today, we're bringing you this webinar on SNAP, and we have a fantastic panel for you that will share lots of information about the importance of SNAP and some of our concerns with current proposals over the next hour. And we'll be sharing the bios for our presenters in the chat. But let me tell you who we have with us today. Mayor Alyia Gaskins from Alexandria, Virginia. Eli Moraru, co-founder and president of the community Grocer. Ellen Linderman, farmer from North Dakota. George Kelemen, senior vice president, program partnerships, campaigns, and advocacy at Share Our Strength. And Lauren Ann Ryan, government affairs director at AARP. Before we turn to our panelists, I would like to just share some basic information about SNAP and food security or food insecurity in the US. And so just to level set for everyone, 47 million people in the US suffer from food insecurity and defined as a lack of access at all times to enough food for a healthy, active life for all household members. SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is a monthly grocery benefit for eligible low-income families and households, which they receive through electronic benefit transfer or EBT cards to use at authorized retailers. Currently, about 42 million people rely on SNAP. The average benefit on SNAP is just $6 a day per person. And we have to remember that we are in an environment where food prices remain very high. While inflation has cooled, food at home prices increased in 2024. So that's just level setting for us in terms of some of the basic information we want everyone to have. I'd like to turn to our panel now, and I believe we're going to start with Eli. So Eli, why is SNAP important to you, your constituents, your community?
Hi, Minerva. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Eli Moraru. I'm the co-founder and president of the Community Grocer. We are a nonprofit organization reinventing the corner store and really reimagining nutritional assistance to ensure that everyone has access to the ingredients to live stronger, healthier lives, starting right here in Southwest Philadelphia. You may or may not have heard of us. We have garnered national attention for being the first SNAP-eligible retailer in the country to effectively allow SNAP recipients to walk away with delicious and full, complete meals out of our first location coming here in Southwest Philadelphia. That has led us to the head of the Philadelphia Food and Nutrition Security Task Force. We were recently named the Rockefeller's Big Bets for U.S. economic opportunity in the United States, one of 12 fellows, and continue to work every day to ensure that everyone has access to the ingredients to make eating well and living well easier for all. But really, what our journey has been over the last 4 years has been working alongside neighbors, our farmers, our thought leaders, our politicians, average Americans, and understanding what the importance of the SNAP dollar is. We know that SNAP is not enough, and I know this personally. As a retailer that is trying to open up in a community affected by food apartheid, I live in an area where for every 10,000 neighbors, there's not a single retailer of fresh, delicious, and nutritious ingredients. For our neighbors, we have 1/3 of our neighbors on SNAP benefits. 53% of my neighbors are considered food insecure here in Philadelphia, and 1 out of every 2 suffer from diet-related diseases right around where our first store is coming. And for the last 4 years, we've been trying to build the retail access to nutrition of our dreams. And we know it can't be SNAP alone. The loan committees don't believe it. Our neighbors know that SNAP at $6 a day isn't enough to feed their entire families. But for our neighbors who are hungry, who are malnourished, and for our farmers is the critical lifeline and investment into the American people. So as a retailer, SNAP is a key piece of our revenue model to allow us to serve the 10,000 neighbors who don't have access to nutrition in Southwest Philadelphia. But more than that, SNAP is an investment. It is an investment in the American and Pennsylvania farmers and distributors that we work with. Without the SNAP dollar, we wouldn't be able to secure these relationships to buy fresh food from our local farmers who are already struggling to make ends meet as we know it. For us, it creates jobs. SNAP is one of the most important bills for a retailer to have revenue streams to hire young people, to hire people, to create jobs and increase economic opportunity. At the community grocer, we are not just your typical corner store. We are having 45 young people come in this next year through a workforce development training program where the revenues and purchasing power of SNAP are critical to ensure that we can hire local youth for career pathways to economic mobility. When consumer confidence is down and healthcare prices are up due to diet-related diseases, we have seen that people who receive SNAP are making healthier food choices. When American people have more dollars in their pockets to spend on real food, they do. SNAP is an investment that reduces grocery prices and increases job opportunities and also reduces healthcare costs in the long term. So for us, we believe and we know that SNAP is a proven investment. For every $1 billion spent on the program, $1.54 billion returns to the US GDP. It creates over 388,000 jobs and over $20 billion in direct wages. SNAP is a multiplier for the US economy, boosting income, spending various for sectors, including food production and distribution. And I'm arguing and proving here in Southwest Philly, it is also a key piece in making America healthy. In addition, as we talk about our deficit, it's on the news every day. SNAP actually contributes $4.5 billion in state and federal tax revenue. So for me and for my neighbors in Southwest Philly, SNAP is not just a handout. It's an investment. It's a key piece that allows retailers like me to open up in food insecure neighborhoods and communities, rural and urban. It creates jobs for our most underserved populations, and it reduces healthcare prices and reduces grocery prices for our neighbors and our entire health and food system by supporting farmers, by supporting distributors, by supporting retailers, and by most importantly, supporting the American economy and our American people. So for me, SNAP and for my community, SNAP is one of the most important and critical programs and effective investments in the American people. So that's why SNAP's important for me. And as we're building this location in Southwest Philly, is the critical dollars. It is the critical investment that allows us to build this dream vision of the America we want for the future, starting from soil to supper. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. And we appreciate your perspective as a grocer, and you talked about the importance of SNAP to, the being an economic engine, but also the importance to the community members. But you also mentioned the importance to farmers. So I'd love to bring Ellen in here. Ellen is a farmer from North Dakota. And Ellen, to address the question to you for everyone is, why is SNAP important to you as a farmer in your sector?
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this discussion, because as a farmer, the SNAP program and the whole nutrition title of the farm program is really important, and it's always been important. As a farmer, as farmers who have worked and resided in our community for 50 plus years, we want to produce a good quality product for the consumer. On our farm, we grow hard red spring wheat, food grade soybeans, and corn. We've also grown durum wheat, which is processed at a local pasta plant here in Carrington. So we are an important part of the food chain. Our soybeans are identity preserved from our farm to the processor to the consumer. So when the consumer purchases a product made with our soybeans, they know where the soybeans came from. We take pride in supplying a quality product for the market. We are proud to be a part of the food chain and domestic food security in this country. And I think that's another issue we need to consider when we consider from the farm to the consumer is domestic food security in this country. And this is true for all farmers that I know. We try to be good stewards of the land as well, as it is what provides our livelihood. I have worked and lobbied on numerous farm bills over the years. From my perspective and those that I work with, we only had a strong bill if we had a strong nutrition title as part of it. Farmers need strong, vibrant communities because this is where we live and where we work, where we raise our families, and most likely where we retire. We care about our communities and those who reside here. We need those communities to thrive so that we have the businesses, schools, and other social structures available for our families to grow and thrive. It is in these businesses that provide the inputs for our farm, and they also provide the markets for our commodities. If one is honest, there is more poverty in rural America than there often is in urban America due to the distance from good paying jobs and other infrastructure issues, such as transportation, or even sometimes a local grocery store. I think if the grocery store in our community were to close, we would have to travel about 40 miles to access a grocery store. This especially affects the elderly who want to continue to live in our communities, as I do. As a farmer who produces an abundant crop each year, food security is of great concern to me. To my mind, there should be no hungry person in this country. Our farmers are very productive. They produce an abundance of commodities that can be used for these food products. We care about our whole community. We want our whole community to be strong. That includes those who can't necessarily afford the food that they need to live a long, productive life. And I think that's an important part of the food chain, and I think the farmers care about that just as much as anybody else. As farmers, we want to be an important part of the food chain, and I think we are. We're the beginning of the food chain. And as this person before me talked about, the grocery stores, all of these things, they provide jobs in our communities. We need these strong communities. We need strong, healthy, vibrant citizens, and that's why the SNAP program is so important. And I'm just going to close with a quote that I've always liked, and it says, "We all do better when we all do better." And I think that's something we need to remember. We're an important part of the food chain, and we want to stay that. And we need a strong, vibrant farm bill that includes a strong nutrition title to be in this position. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. We appreciate you joining us today and your perspective on the importance of farmers, as well as SNAP to the farm economy. Now we'll turn to Lauren from AARP. We'll talk a little bit about the folks who use SNAP, particularly seniors. So Lauren, over to you.
Thanks, Minerva. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Ryan, and I'm a Government Affairs Director with AARP. We advocate for more than 100 million Americans who are age 50 and older, and we care deeply about SNAP as an issue because for some of our most vulnerable neighbors, the program really is a lifeline, especially in these times of high grocery prices. As people age, they may face life challenges that put them at a greater risk of food insecurity. So they may face things like job losses, medical crises, the death of a spouse or a loved one. And all of these things can lead to unexpected financial instability and increased difficulty affording food. Unfortunately, after years of decline, and I think we can go to the second slide. Sorry, I should have paused. Unfortunately, after years of decline, food insecurity among older Americans is on the rise. 12.6 million older adults struggled to access adequate nutrition in 2023. And again, I think a lot of what I'll talk about will be echoed by some of the other panelists and has already been mentioned. But these individuals in particular face really unique challenges as it relates to their age. So oftentimes these individuals are facing things like higher healthcare costs, limited mobility, and they're really making difficult trade-offs every day between paying for basic necessities like food and medicine, or paying for things and paying for rent and things like that. And this is really where SNAP comes in. SNAP participation among older adults in particular is associated with reduced food insecurity, to be sure, but also reduced healthcare costs, fewer hospitalizations and emergency room visits. as well as lower rates of hospital and long-term care admissions. So in short, SNAP really is a sound investment in the health and security of older adults. We can go to that second slide. It really truly is a lifeline for the 11 million older adults who currently participate in the program. But even so, SNAP benefits are pretty modest. In the 10 million households with a person 50 and older who participate in the program, the average benefit is $185 a month, and that's just $6 a day. One other thing I really wanted to highlight here is that there are still many people who qualify but lack access to SNAP. 16 million older adults qualify, are eligible for SNAP but remain unenrolled. And that's something that we're continually trying to address to make sure that people who qualify for the program, are eligible for the program, have access to the resources they need to live long, healthy lives. And so I think from our perspective at AARP, we're looking at with rising food prices, rising food insecurity, and a truly growing aging population, it's really more important than ever that we work to strengthen the SNAP program and figure out how to make sure that it's working for those who need it. And that's one of the reasons why SNAP is so vitally important and why AARP cares so deeply about the program. And I will pass it off back to Minerva.
Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate your perspective. Want to turn now to George, who can talk from the other end of the age spectrum about the impact on children and families of SNAP. So George, why is SNAP important?
Thanks, Minerva, and it's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Hunger, we believe at Share Our Strength and No Kid Hungry that hunger is an eminently solvable problem in America. And so SNAP is a big part of that. It's a proven and effective anti-hunger program. It's the nation's most powerful tool to fight hunger. It reaches nearly 16 million kids, ensuring that they have access to nutritious food during critical stages of growth. 80% of SNAP households include a child. And this also ensures that the program truly does serve those that are most in need. And 1 in 5 kids in the U.S. face hunger today. So we're consistently, whether it's through this reconciliation process or through Farm Bill legislation or other legislation, we're consistently working with Congress and encouraging them to act to protect programs like SNAP and other food and nutrition programs so that every eligible family and kid can afford the groceries and the food that they need so that they can, continue to be nourished and be focused and grow up healthy. SNAP also supports working families and families that are living in poverty. Almost 75% of SNAP participants live at or below the poverty line, and 86% of those who can work do. So SNAP truly does help fill gaps for families whose jobs don't pay enough to cover basic needs like food. And additionally, and this is really important to us and how it impacts kids, qualifying for SNAP helps families be eligible for other really important food and nutrition programs such as school meals, summer meals, and WIC. The notion or the concept of school meals and that program and the impact that it has on kids every single day and their ability to get a nutritious meal, whether it's breakfast, school breakfast, whether it's school lunch or both, and the impact that has on their ability to learn, to be active, to be focused, and how it impacts their growth is incredible. And we see that every single day. So that's a direct link to SNAP. If you qualify for SNAP, you qualify for these programs, and it truly does help kids. And SNAP helps families that with low incomes cut through the red tape so that they can access all of these nutrition programs because it's sort of a one-stop shop. So families need support, not bureaucratic barriers. That's something that we always strive to push for to help them stabilize and thrive. So again, we're pleased to be here. and look forward to the rest of the conversation. Thanks, Minerva.
Thank you, George. So important to hear about those benefits for children and families. And now I'll turn to Mayor Gaskins from Alexandria, Virginia. Mayor, thank you for joining us today. And would you share why SNAP is important to you and your constituents?
Everyone, it's good to be with you. I am Mayor Gaskins from the city of Alexandria. So we are just across the river from those who are located in the nation's capital, and we are a city of about 160,000 people. When I think about why SNAP is important to me, I'll be honest, protecting SNAP is personal. I grew up in a family where I was raised by a single mom. My mom worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to try and make ends meet. And the reality is, no matter how hard my mom worked, we still often struggled. And that struggle showed up a lot as many, many nights where there was just no food in the fridge or in the cabinets. My mom also has diabetes and asthma. And so in the months where food was scarce, those were also the same times when we were in and out of the emergency room, because it's really hard to manage your diabetes, or it's really hard to just manage your health in general if you don't have nutritious food to eat. And the reality is, no matter how much we worked, no matter how much my mom tried, we still made just a few bucks too many in order to qualify for SNAP. And so for me, my experience comes from the fact that I recognize how critical SNAP would have been as a lifeline for our family. I am one of the millions of Americans who are just on the edge, who could truly benefit from ensuring that they have nutritional support and access, instead of suffering through the nights where your belly is rumbling, your headaches, and all of the other things that come when we don't have proper nutrition and support. The sad thing is that same story continues in Alexandria today. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to connect with Alive. Alive is one of the community food distribution partners for our the Capital Area Food Bank. Just last month, they served over 20,000 people. Of those 20,000 people, only about 25% qualify for SNAP. Those are people who every single month are trying to figure out how they're going to be able to provide for their families. They are working, they are doing everything we ask them to do. They are showing up day in and day out, yet the cabinets continue to remain bare. And so when I think about our city and when I think about the horrible impacts that the proposed cuts could have, I worry about those families. I worry about the fact that instead of talking about how to protect, strengthen, and expand SNAP, we are thinking about harmful cuts. Now is the time for us to be thinking about how we address the 1 in 7 Alexandrians who are facing hunger, thinking about how we ensure that everyone has the proper nutrition they need, because that nutrition is what is ultimately going to fuel the American dream. If we want to produce the next generation of scientists, of innovators, of manufacturers, of farmers, they need food so that they can learn, so that they can pay attention to the lessons in the classroom, and so that they can thrive. And so now is the time to continue to invest in this effective and proven program, and to make sure that every Alexandrian, but also every American, has the food they need to reach their full health potential and well-being. And that is why SNAP is important to me and to my city.
Thank you, Mayor Gaskins. Really appreciate your comments. And also, you've started to turn us to our next question, which is the impact of the recent House-passed budget reconciliation bill. And so I'd like our panelists to respond to this, but first let me give everyone a little background. So on May 22nd, the House passed what they're calling the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, H.R. 1, which is a budget reconciliation bill that cuts almost $300 billion from SNAP over the next decade. The proposal, which is now being considered by the Senate, would achieve these budget cuts by a number of different measures, and I'm just going to mention what they are. It's a long list, so bear with me. First, shifting costs to states to pay for a portion of SNAP benefits and a higher percentage of administrative costs. Raising the age for work requirements from 54 to 64 years of age, and expanding work requirements for parents of age 7 or older. Restricting states' ability to waive work requirements in counties with an unemployment rate greater than 10%. limiting future updates to the Thrifty Food Plan, which is the basis for calculating the SNAP benefit, disallowing benefits for certain people with lawful immigration status, not allowing applicants to count internet costs as part of their shelter and housing expenses, and allowing only elderly or disabled applicants to count utility deductions in calculating their housing and the shelter expenses in the SNAP application. And finally, eliminating the SNAP Ed program altogether. So these are the proposals that the Senate is now considering. I'd like to bring our panel in to respond to any of these particular points. And George, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Happy to dive in. So I'll and thank you for laying all that out, Minerva. I think you laid it out well in terms of the harmful provisions that are in the reconciliation bill as it relates to food nutrition and SNAP program. I would say, I'd focus on three of the most harmful sort of proposals. First, you mentioned the cuts or the adjustments to the Thrifty Food Program. So, it would cut future benefits by an estimated $37 billion, which is just going to make it harder for families to cope with rising food costs over time. This will limit the ability of SNAP to keep up with the cost of putting food on the table and just make the value of the benefit progressively go down. This is obviously a major problem because the benefit is just not going to keep its value. It's going to weaken SNAP ability to assist families and to truly provide that gap filling benefit. We're also concerned that number two is the cost shift to states. This is members of Congress are saying, well, we're not cutting SNAP. Well, they're basically putting it on states and they're going to force governors and state legislatures to essentially cut SNAP because of the added burdens and cost shifts that they're going to put on states. For the first time ever, states are going to be they're sort of their cut of SNAP. I mean, they already pay. They have skin in the game. They pay 50% of the administrative cost to administer the program in the relative states. According to this proposal, that would go up to 75%. So that's a 25%, plus up in their costs, in addition to the sliding scale on the error rates that have been proposed in this bill as well, that start at 5% and go up to as high as 25%, depending on the state's error rate. So conceivably, best case scenario under this proposal, states are going to look at a 30% plus up in their costs to administer the program. That's bad enough, but if there are higher error rates, it could be as high as 50% or more. So it's been as we've talked to state officials, to governors and others, there's no way that any state can absorb that big of a price hike. And so at the end of the day, what's going to happen is it's going to result in states making the really, really tough decision to have to cut back on benefits and cut back on eligibility and just restrict how many people they can allow into the program, which is cutting benefits and cutting people off of SNAP. We've actually developed what we think is a pretty handy one-pager that I think is going to be dropped into the chat, that actually lays out state by state where they are now in terms of their total cost, and under this proposal, what the added cost would be if the cost shift that are currently in the bill were to pass all the way through. I will say that we're working very, very hard. I think as a lot of folks on this call are, and a lot of the people on the panel are, to have the Senate push back on that. And it looks like, the Republicans on the Senate Ag Committee are very opposed to the state cost shift. Our hope is that they peel all that back as a start. That would go a long, long way in really minimizing the impact of what's been proposed thus far. And then the third point is that the proposal will make it even harder for parents of young kids as young as 7 to access the food they need by imposing even more onerous work requirements to even be on SNAP. And so this really fails to recognize like the mayor said, the really tough spot that parents and caregivers, whether it's grandparents raising grandchildren, anybody who's raising a kid, the tough spot that they're in when they're trying to do the right thing, they're trying to make sure that they work to put food on the table to meet their needs, but they're not quite there. And a program like SNAP definitely helps meet that need. Additionally, like we talked about before, like I mentioned before, eligibility for SNAP pretty much translates to eligibility for school meals, school lunches, school breakfast, summer meals, and that would the proposal would if those individuals, those families that have young children, school-age children, all of a sudden were not eligible or cut off of SNAP, it would cut those kids off of those programs, which are so important as well. So it's definitely a really bad sort of cascading effect. So as we've told, as we lobbied on the House side, and we have been also on the Senate side, we think these cuts are really dangerous and short-sighted. There are definitely other ways to work to improve SNAP, to make it an efficient and streamlined program without hurting beneficiaries and without cutting benefits. And we think it's a missed opportunity for real meaningful progress in ensuring that SNAP continues to be the proven and effective program that it is. So I'll stop there, and happy to answer any questions going further. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you for sharing those concerns and you specifically mentioned the cost shift to states. I'd love to get Mayor Gaskins in here on this point as well. How might this impact your community there in Virginia?
Yes, thank you for the question, Minerva, and thank you, George, for where you started us. When I think about these proposed cuts, it is the cost shift that really worries me the most. At the end of the day, if states cannot absorb this, then they're going to be making cuts to localities and municipalities like mine. What that could look like in Alexandria, I think the numbers we've seen are up to a loss of like $25 million that goes directly to our community to provide food, nutrition, and well-being support for children, families, and seniors in our city. I think the thing that we have to be focused on the most, that it's not just about the dollars and cents. Behind every one of those numbers is a person. That's 8,000 children in our community and over 2,000 seniors. And so it terrifies me to think about what these cuts could mean to their health, their stability, and just ability to be able to stay and live in our community. I also wanted to pick up on the other piece that George mentioned as it relates to the work requirements, because this is another thing that gives me worry. I'm a mom of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I live in a high cost community. I think anybody who lives in the DMV knows how hard it can be to live here, whether that's the cost of groceries or just the cost of housing. In order to serve as mayor, my husband and I work a combined 4 jobs. Like many low income families who are working multiple jobs, your schedules are not 9 to 5. Your hours are not always predictable. You're trying to do the best you can just to string all the dollars together. The more onerous and difficult we make work requirements or other burdens to the program, it doesn't actually help families. Instead, it makes it more difficult for them to be the type of parent they want to be, to work the jobs that they're trying to work, but also be able to be home to help their kids with their homework, to provide that support and care, to be able to talk to their kid about their day. And so I think there are important changes that we can make. There are ways that we can strengthen the program, but we need to do so in a way that not only protects people's nutrition, but also ensures that we don't make it so difficult that they don't even want to access this benefit, or that they can't access it because they're trying to do everything else they need to survive.
Thank you, Mayor. And you mentioned, one of the food distribution programs in your county and city, and how they're already struggling. So imagine, the loss of the kinds of SNAP benefits we're talking about, and the impact on the charitable food system. We know that that is a big concern as well. And all of this, in the budget reconciliation bill is not just proposing to cut SNAP, it's proposing to cut Medicaid and other basic needs programs. So, we can imagine the sort of exponential impacts of these cuts on low income families. And thank you for sharing that perspective as well.
If I could just add one last point to that, when I talk to our food providers in the city, it's important to recognize not only do they depend on these critical programs, but they also are already tapping many of our philanthropic resources. And so any further cuts, it doesn't mean that philanthropy and others can just absorb that impact. At some point, there becomes a limited set of resources that we can't make up in the same way that proven programs like SNAP have been able to do.
Thank you so much. Let's turn to some of our other panelists to address their concerns with the budget reconciliation bill. Next, I'll go to Lauren.
Thanks, Minerva. I think as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we feel very strongly that this is the time that we should be connecting more eligible older adults to SNAP and other nutrition assistance programs. We know that millions of older adults who are eligible for the program are already not enrolled. And so I think we're really deeply concerned that adding more hurdles could push even more vulnerable individuals out of the program and exacerbate food insecurity even further. When in terms of our concerns, I think two areas where we really have we've talked about our concerns and we would like to address are work requirements and the state cost share. We know as it relates to work requirements that 64% of workers age 50 and older have seen or experienced age discrimination in the workforce. We also know that older adults are often unemployed for much longer than other younger workers. And in addition to facing pervasive age discrimination, many older adults are forced to cut hours or drop out of the workforce to care for their loved ones. We have research that shows that 42% of family caregivers have had to quit their job or cut back on hours because of caregiving responsibilities. And we worry that expanding existing work requirements and making it even more difficult for this population of people to access SNAP benefits means that we'll see even more damage to people's health. We know that recent estimates suggest that 3 million people could lose some or all of their SNAP benefits if these additional work requirements were to go into effect, and that includes nearly 1 million older adults, 55 and older, something that, again, we're very concerned about. When it comes to state cost share, I think we echo so many of the other comments that have already been made. Requiring states to cover a portion of these SNAP costs and increase their costs would really shift financial pressure onto state budgets, many of which are already stretched thin. They're already sort of tapping out, and I think the concern here is that states would be forced to do things like restrict eligibility, limit benefits to manage these new costs. And we are seeing estimates that suggest that in response to these changes, states would end up reducing or eliminating benefits altogether for more than 1 million people. And so ultimately, I think with food insecurity on the rise and across the US, we really do worry that significant structural changes to SNAP could make the trade-offs that I've talked about before even worse and more severe. And it would undermine the program's ability to really serve those who need it most, undermine the program's the purpose. And I think making it more difficult for older adults to participate in SNAP will really only add to the challenges that we already know that they face, and again, increase things like food insecurity and health and worsen health outcomes. So again, I know that I've echoed some of what others have already said, but I think that just reiterates how concerning some of these changes could be.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that perspective. Eli, I know you wanted to respond to the proposals as well.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'd love to thank my fellow panelists for really bringing up the core issues in this bill. And this is the deepest cut in SNAP's history. And at the end of the day, it is both punitive and short-sighted. That as we talk about these errors and the movement to shift cost to the state, I'm really glad and honored to be representing Pennsylvania here. Pennsylvania, which is a state that has some of the biggest growing, best farmers in the country, a state that actually works with a divided legislator, and so much bipartisan policy comes out of here. A state where fresh food financing was created, and really the understanding that food is an investment in the American people began. But this bill is so punitive and so short-sighted. And I want to say one thing as we talk about the cost sharing and the measure to put more dollars in the state. Currently, the way it works is if your state has some clerical errors in administration, you do get a fee. You get charged more dollars by the federal government to take up your admin. But the new shift is so punitive that will happen that instead of being able to fix that the next year, there will be so much state dollars that have to be put into SNAP based on this punitive bill that we won't error rates will continue to go up as we'll have to cut admin and we'll have to cut benefits. So this doesn't make sense at all, that this cost sharing is going to actually make more error rates in its administration, and it's going to hurt the American people. And at the Community Grocer, we are a retailer, but we also run a pantry every single Friday. And ever since USDA cuts have taken into place, we lost 1/3 of our food. The pantry line has grown week by week. We used to serve 140 families. We're now up to 250 families each week with less food to serve them. This new proposal would kick kids and families off the free school meal plans and make it harder for working families to actually access free food in schools. I was recently in DC talking with a farmer in Connecticut who USDA cuts have meant that their farm that has been around for over 35 years is at risk of going under. And that the key piece that is allowing them just barely to stay alive is actually these contracts with retailers like me. But if we lose and our neighbors lose the purchasing power to keep our doors open as a retailer, to keep buying from American farmers, then that farm is going under. That my store, my retailer will go under. We will lose jobs. We will lose economic opportunity. We'll lose food access. So as much as we want to talk about cuts and we want to save money for the government, SNAP is a proven investment, right? Every $1 billion spent is $1.54 billion into the GDP. So as we start cutting that, what does that do? It reduces our GDP. It means more kids go hungry. It means more farmers go under. And for here in Pennsylvania, we're looking at the numbers, and the state will not be able to pick up the slack. So all that to say that this is a bad bill. It is not a big, beautiful bill. It's a bad bill. And that with cutting SNAP Ed, which is $5 a year per participant, that is an proven investment in our healthcare system. SNAP Ed ensures that our neighbors are eating better, making better choices, and ensuring that our healthcare system is actually put under less pressure. But with the elimination of SNAP Ed, with cuts to SNAP and this cost sharing, we're going to have more hungry kids. We're going to have less farmers. We're going to have less retailers. We're going to have higher rates of food insecurity, higher rates of malnutrition. And I don't know anyone who can get behind that. So if we just lay out the facts of this bill and what this will really mean to the American people, we know it's a bad bill. And so we need to continue to share, continue to learn, and actually talk about what this means for the American people. So I want to thank all my panelists for sharing those sentiments. But here in Pennsylvania, here in Philadelphia, here in one of the largest farming states, this bill is going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot of American people. And we're just here to share the voices of our neighbors, of our thought leaders, of our farmers, and saying that we need to fight back on this bill.
Hey, Minerva, if I could make a quick point. I think
Yeah,
Eli hit
please.
two great points that we've actually been pushing and stressing quite a bit on the Hill, particularly to Republican offices. One, the economic argument that this is an economic imperative, right? And he just laid out the chain, those links that are all interlinked from farm to store to community to jobs to stores in quote unquote food deserts. All of this is linked, and if these cuts happen, then all of that starts to go away, and so it's not good at all. And then also the piece about the healthy and nutritious options. The administration has been big on MAHA. They just released the first MAHA report. As we talk to administration officials, that's all they want to talk about. The SNAP Ed cut is like it's like the polar opposite of the MAHA agenda. And so we've tried to, share that with them and kind of have them, kind of put two and two together and understand that you're pushing an agenda and encouraging an agenda on one end, and yet, kneecapping it on the other end, essentially. And so two really good points. I'm glad he raised that, because that's something that, both of those points we've been working, as we talk about all the other stuff we've laid out, we also try to stress that, because those are two very, very real and important points to make.
Thank you so much. And I think that, everyone has made the point that SNAP for decades has demonstrated real improvement in health, and so that this, we always say at the Alliance that food security is the basis, the foundation of nutrition security, and programs like SNAP really help to reduce food costs as well as improve health overall. So again, pointing out some of the inconsistencies with saying that we really want to make America healthier, which I think we all agree, and then cutting a program like SNAP, which provides the basic support for healthy food in households. Thank you so much, George. And Ellen, would love to get your thoughts on the proposals to cut SNAP and what that might mean for you or and the farming community.
Well, I would just almost reiterate everything everybody else has said. I live out here in a very rural state, and our state is dependent on agriculture and a strong agricultural system to keep the state going. Any shifting of cost to the states is going to be really detrimental to North Dakota, because we always have a tight budget and they always argue about where the money is going to be spent. And so I am totally against that. And as far as they talk about having parents go to work when the child turns 7, well, we are already in a critical situation when it comes to childcare out here in the rural areas. There just are no available options lots of times, and these kids then stay home alone, and that's not a good scenario. And as far as the elderly, and there are a lot of elderly people in our communities, what are they going to do? They need to have the SNAP program available, and they need to be eligible for it. We need a healthy community out here. And as far as I can see, these cuts that they're talking about are going to cost us more in the long run. We're going to have to make up these with maybe more healthcare costs on the other end. It's just not a good idea, and it makes no sense for the rural economy out here at all. And I would advocate, as a farmer, we still need a good, strong, standalone farm bill that includes that strong nutrition title. And I think everybody, bipartisan support exists for that. We just need to advocate for it more. And that's basically all I have to add, because everybody has said all of the things that are so important about the SNAP program. It is needed in this country.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for your passion, and really appreciate your perspective on this as well. So we're going to ask folks who have questions to submit them in the Q&A, and we will address them. And while we're waiting for questions to come in, let me thank all of the panelists. Really appreciate all of you today for joining us, and just reiterate some of the major points, which is SNAP is an effective and efficient program that increases the well-being of millions of families and individuals. SNAP helps people achieve, their best lives through reducing poverty and food insecurity, but also improving nutrition and health and bettering educational and employment outcomes. SNAP supports the economy, the entire food chain from farmers to retailers to consumers, and is responsive to economic conditions. And so, we are very concerned about cost shifts to states, which would then mean that you may or may not receive SNAP benefits or the same level of benefits depending on where you live. And that would be a serious, retrenchment of the commitment that we've made in this country to make sure that no matter where you live, what zip code you're in, that you have access to healthy, nutritious food through the SNAP program. And so before we take questions, I'll just, end with a call to action. We are calling on the Senate to reject the budget reconciliation package, which would undermine SNAP and cut benefits for up to 4.6 million people over time. And so we're incredibly concerned about that. And I'll also end with a warning from Feeding America. If this legislation is enacted, they say, it could take 9.5 billion meals each year from the plates of people experiencing food insecurity, including children, veterans, seniors, and people with disabilities. Hunger transcends party lines, and the adverse impact of this legislation will be felt in every community across the political spectrum. That's from Feeding America. And so we thank you for your time and attention, and we'll be happy to take any questions you might have now. So again, please put questions in the Q&A. So I'll kind of call out some of the questions as they come in. And the first question is for you, Eli, the community grocer. Is the community grocer getting any support from large retailers? And they mention Aldi, Walmart, or Kroger.
Yeah, so the Community Grocer, yeah, we are a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, and we've garnered a lot of support. We work very closely with different food distributors, farmers, growers, health systems. We have many of our partners, M&T Bank, the FMC Corporation, who does agri-sciences. We have AmeriHealth Caritas, who does health work. The large grocers we haven't partnered with yet. We're still a young organization building day by day, so we might get there, but we're really focused on nutrition on the local level, community run, neighborhood driven, in footprints that don't typically work for large grocers. We're in our neighborhood in Southwest Philly. We have about 20,000 neighbors who are within walking distance of our store without adequate nutrition access. And there's a long history, of course, of zoning policy, of redlining that doesn't allow grocers really to come into this footprint. We are really densely packed with a lot of families living in our district and where we operate. And what we're really trying to do is bring back food what was once there 40 years ago. Bring back the local store with farm fresh ingredients back into your community that creates jobs and supports you and your neighbors. So not yet, but we do work a lot with the Alliance to End Hunger. We're part of the Global Food Institute. We work with the Philadelphia Food and Nutrition Security Task Force and are always looking for additional partners, support to really bring this vision to life. But the short answer is no, as of yet.
Thank you, Eli. George, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, as far as the legislative effort is concerned, the grocery industry is engaged through their trade associations. We're working sort of in a loose coalition that includes the National Grocers Association, which represents small and independent grocers, family-owned grocers, as well as the Food Marketing Institute, which is the larger brands, the Krogers and Albertsons of the world. And I know there are some individual companies that are also very engaged. So I'm not going to speak for them necessarily, but they are active as far as the legislative effort is concerned and pushing back on the bill.
Thank you so much. So we have a question about the impact this bill, if it's passed, could have on nonprofits such as Meals on Wheels programs or after school programs if this goes into effect. Lauren, do you want to talk about what impact this could have to senior food distribution programs?
No, I think one of our concerns, and this echoes what some others have said before, is we are not going to be able to snap our way out of food insecurity in its entirety. And so what's really important is that all of these programs are working together. And if one leg of the stool falls, or if there are issues with that, we are concerned that that's going to have a downstream impact on so many of these other really important programs. And so I think the health of things like Meals on Wheels, the health of things like some of the other nutrition programs, really depend on all of those programs working together. And that's why I think the stability and the strength of SNAP is so crucially important. Because like I said, all of all of those programs need to work together. And without SNAP, it would just put so much more pressure on programs. And I think, this was mentioned before. We're already tapping out. So many of these nonprofits are already tapping out philanthropy, and they're not going to be able to overcome significant cuts in such a massive, important program like SNAP.
Thank you so much. And one of our attendees is asking, what can folks do to prevent these cuts from happening? So first and foremost, call your senators. Let them know that these provisions are unacceptable to you. We at the Alliance have an action that's ongoing, and I'll ask my colleagues to drop that information in the chat for any of you who might want to join us in these actions. But I'm sure our colleagues on the webinar also have ways that you can participate. So I'll open it up to the panel, and get your thoughts as well.
I think you stated it perfectly, Minerva. Got to call your senators, and make clear why this matters. And obviously, the more senators hear from their constituents, not necessarily, they need to hear from organizations like ours, but they also need to hear from constituents. And so the more you can rally your members, constituents, allies, people in your community, yeah, absolutely. We have a call to action out, as I know a lot of other groups do. And so the more voices pouring in, the better.
Thank you. And I noticed Karen added our action alert in the chat. Thank you so much. If for your organizations that are doing actions, please add those in the chat as well. We do count on you to help bring attention to these issues. And thank you, George. I think you're right. Members of Congress also need to hear from constituents. Thank you for that. I think there is one more question in the chat, which gets into some pretty wonky policy areas, but I'll throw it open in case any of the panelists want to address it, or maybe our colleague at the Alliance and Hunger, Karen, wants to address. But why are we why are we doing SNAP changes through budget reconciliation as opposed to a farm bill? The farm bill is supposed to be reauthorized every 5 years, and that's usually where we make changes to SNAP, which is part of the farm bill. So, excuse me, I'll recognize any of our panelists who wants to address this question. Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay. And you're correct. It's usually just part of the farm bill, and that's something that I really don't understand at all. It's almost like they're trying to break apart support not only for the farm bill, but also for the nutrition part of the farm bill. And if they do that, then the coalition goes away, and there's not as much strength for either position. And so I think it's really important that we maintain this whole solid program from the farm to the table, and its importance not only to the farmer, but also to the consumer, and to our rural communities for that matter. So we need to have a strong standalone farm bill. And it seems to me like this is their way of trying to break apart that coalition, and to not have a strong farm bill or a strong nutrition bill.
Thank you, Ellen. And you're right, there has been a bipartisan support and a long-term coalition, rural and urban and suburban, working on a farm bill. As you mentioned, that's so important from farm to table. And so we also join your call for a robust farm bill. Thank you all for your time and attention. We will end here, and appreciate your time today and joining us for this very important discussion. In the chat, we'll drop my email in case anyone has follow-up questions, and really appreciate everyone's time and attention today. We'll leave if folks are grabbing resources from the chat, we'll leave the webinar open for a few minutes for folks to be able to do that. Thank you again, and it's been a pleasure. And thank you to our panelists today. Really appreciate your time and your work in this field. And thank you so much.